Believers in conditional immortality and annihilationism think the Bible teaches that when the unsaved are raised from the dead to be judged, they will literally die a second time, never to live again. Defenders of eternal torment, however, will sometimes cite Genesis 2:17 as proof that death means separation, not an end to embodied life. There, God warns Adam, "In the day you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall surely die." But of course, Adam doesn't die the very day that he eats from the fruit. He dies 930 years later. And so it is argued he must have spiritually died in the sense of being separated from God on the very day that he ate of the fruit. But there are a few problems with this line of reasoning. Firstly, what it means for a human being to be alive has already been explained by this point in the narrative. God creates Adam's lifeless body of dust and then breathes into its nostrils the breath of life, and it's at that point Adam is said to become a living being. So for a human to be a living being is to be embodied and breathing, and to be dead is to no longer be embodied and breathing. Secondly, the word translated die in Genesis 2:17 is used 78 times in the book of Genesis, and 75 of those times are unmistakable, undisputed references to physical death. Only here in Genesis 2 and 3 are there 3 occurrences of the word where defenders of eternal torment think it carries some specialized meaning of separation. But it strains credulity to think that these 3 occurrences out of 78 have this specialized meaning when all other 75 universally refer to physical death. Thirdly and finally, when in chapter 3 of Genesis God elaborates upon the sentence he had warned Adam about, his language of death is an unmistakable reference to physical death. So he tells Adam, "To dust you shall return." And then he kicks Adam and Eve out of the garden for an express purpose, so that they cannot reach out and take from the tree of life and eat and live forever. So by kicking Adam and Eve out of the garden and revoking their access to the tree of life, God secures Adam and Eve's eventual physical demise, the death he warned about in Genesis 2:17. How then should we understand this phrase, "in the day," in Genesis 2:17? Well, firstly, it's important to recognize that very few translations render it "on the day," which would come closer to meaning that Adam would die on the very day that he ate of the fruit. Most translations use the phrase "in the day," which is more flexible and can be used figuratively. I can say something happened in my grandfather's day, which refers to the time during which he lived, not any specific day therein. Indeed, some translations use the word "when," which points to one way of understanding this phrase. If I say when you eat too much you get fat, I'm not saying the moment you overeat you will become morbidly obese. I'm saying the one leads inevitably to the other. It's a statement about certainty, not immediacy. And we can see the phrase used in this way in Deuteronomy 27, 2-4. There Moses tells the people of Israel, "On the day you cross the Jordan, you were to perform this ceremony on Mount Ebal." But Moses couldn't have expected the mass of the untrained people of Israel to march 15 to 40 miles from where they crossed the Jordan in Joshua 3 to get to Mount Ebal on the very day they crossed that river. Indeed, we see in Joshua 8 that when they finally arrive at Mount Ebal, it's been well over a week. So all Moses was saying was, when you cross the Jordan, you were to perform this ceremony, and they did, just not on that very day. Another possible way to understand Genesis 2:17 is in a literalistic way, as saying Adam would die on the very day that he ate of the tree, but perhaps God delayed that death penalty. In Genesis 3, after Adam and Eve sin, God provides them with animal skins to cover their nakedness, which could have only come from animals that were killed. Ancient Israel's original readers would have recognized here a proto-substitutionary sacrifice, and perhaps by the blood of that sacrifice, God temporarily covered the sins of Adam and Eve so that he wouldn't have to execute the death penalty on that very day, but they could go on living and reproducing. Whether we understand Genesis 2:17 as saying Adam would die when he ate from the fruit, but not necessarily on that very day, or as a warning he would merit the death penalty on the very day that he ate of the fruit, but God delayed the penalty, either way, Genesis 2:17 is fully consistent with the overall biblical teaching that human beings deserve to physically die and never live again because of their sins.